Welcome to another session of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. My special guest this week is Tim O'Reilly, a longtime friend who always has interesting things to share with me, not just tools, but other stuff as well. But today we're going to talk about some of Tim's favorite tools. So Tim, would you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, hi. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called O'Reilly Media. We are well known in the computer industry as a book publisher, although for the last couple of decades, our principal business has been really an online learning platform at O'Reilly.com, which has things like live training, interactive, Jupyter notebooks, live video training courses, and then of course the tens of thousands of ebooks. It's mostly sold as a corporate subscription, but we do also make it available to individuals. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about today. I think I would be talking about my cool programming tools, but no. Instead, I'm up at a cabin in the Sierras that I bought this spring. And I've been doing a lot of clearing of brush for fire purposes. In fact, there's a fire just started about 10 miles away today. Fortunately, they nipped it in the bud, or we might be not be here. We might be evacuating. But I've been having to clear a lot of brush around the house. There's basically, if you look out, I think you should be able to see there's a lot of trees, and they're too close to the house. I've actually cleared a lot already, but I have an array of chainsaws to do the clearing, and also some wonderful sort of geared loppers, which I'm going to show you. And the thing that's really kind of fun is I started clearing for fire purposes, but then I realized, the same thing that is good for fire also makes the place more beautiful. Like, we're really close to the river, and as you can kind of see, more of that brush, you're gonna be able to see more of the river, and that brush is fire dangerous. And I'm having actually a crew come in to do a whole clearing along the driveway. I couldn't schedule them already, or it would have been done before fire season rather than in the middle of it. But anyway, it's kind of wonderful because I've had an electric chainsaw for a couple of years, but I haven't used it so much. And now I've actually gone back to getting a gas chainsaw as well, because I'm using it frequently enough and they're more powerful. But the beauty of the electric chainsaws is that if you don't use it that often, a gas chainsaw just is almost impossible to start. My steel, I've been away for about a month, and I took me about 10 minutes to get started yesterday, and today it's still sort of being recalcitrant, like Robert Louis Stevenson's mule Modestine in Travels with a Donkey, or actually his donkey in Travels with a Donkey. Whereas the electric chainsaw just always works, and there's a variety of them. I have a little small handheld one, a mid-sized one, and a pole saw. And they're all super handy.
Are any of them, have you tried the cordless ones yet?
Oh yeah, these are all cordless.
Oh, these are all cordless. Okay. Well, yeah. Show us one of them.
So this is the one I use the most.
Ah, wow.
In the view?
Yeah.
Just press the button on the back.
Wow. How long will that run for? How long will it run for on a battery?
Maybe an hour.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And the thing that's really nice is that the batteries are interchangeable. You don't have to have, I have two batteries for a bunch of tools. So you just click it, pull it out. This is the one that I really love.
What kind was that, Tim? What was the brand or the model?
Sorry. These are Greenworks Pro.
Okay.
But and they're all, so I've gotten all the same brand. You can see this one is a little short chainsaw.
Oh, wow.
On the end of a long pole. And that's great for doing what they call limbing up. when you have a tall tree with low-hanging branches, basically fires propagate in the Sierra through grass often. I mean, again, they can start anywhere, but if they start in grass, for example, then they'll ignite brush, and then they'll ignite low limbs. So one of the things you do in fire protection is you take out the low brush. For example, you take out the pines that are growing up among the oaks, but then you also have to limb up the trees that remain so that the lowest limbs are maybe a dozen feet high, because that makes it much safer. So that's great. The one thing the one tool of theirs that I'm really disappointed in is this little one. First of all, it has an incompatible battery.
Could you put up higher? Yeah.
This
okay.
This little one I thought would be great for cutting off limbs, because you cut a small tree, and then you've got to cut off the branches and so on. But I thought it'd be the same. It's a 10-inch, just like the one on the end of the pole. But the one on the end of the pole cuts like butter, and this one cuts like a dull knife, and it's been sharpened. I don't quite understand what the difference is. This one is a disappointment, the little 10-inch hand one. The thing that also has been a wonderful discovery are these Fiskars Power Gear 2 geared loppers. You see the little gear there in the middle?
Yeah.
And they're just so powerful. Let me actually pull up a little. I basically thought, well, I'll do a little clearing this morning in preparation for Cool Tools. I hung a hammock the other day, and there was a small pine tree that was in the middle of the path that I wanted to go to, where I hung the hammock between two oaks. And so I cut out the pine tree with the first chainsaw I showed you. It's about maybe 4 inches thick at the base, and then I cut it into pieces. And I brought one of the pieces up here, and I'm just going to grab it. Here's the piece I saved. You can kind of see, and watch this.
So it has about like a 2.5-inch diameter.
Yeah, and I watched this with the small hand chainsaw, and it's pretty slow.
Just careful.
So that's really disappointing. I mean, if I did it with the bigger one, which I don't want to do one-handed, and show you, you wouldn't be too happy. But watch how well this Lopper will do it.
Yeah.
That's a cool tool. I mean, we had a pair of loppers before, some long handle loppers, and my wife broke it trying to cut something too thick. This thing will cut anything up to 2 inches. I mean, if wood is like a dead dry piece of oak, no. But for so much of what you're doing, it's so much the fastest way to cut up. And you got to, when you take these things out, you got to cut it off in small pieces. And so
that's
anyway.
That's a Fiskar?
Fiskars.
Yeah.
You can kind of see. I think it's called Ultra. It says Ultra Blade. And it's Fiskars L5532.
Okay.
And you could get them for about $44 at Ace Hardware.
Okay. That's really great. So that's two great cool tools. Do you have another?
Oh, wait. I have to show you this. I really should for the chainsaw. If you're doing much of chainsawing, you need a pair of these Kevlar overalls. I didn't wear them while demoing, but I probably should have, because they will basically stop the blade if you accidentally, cut through something. And I'm also wearing.
What about your torso? Is it just?
Well, if you're doing overhead stuff, you might have a risk of that, but mainly your risk is you're cutting through something and you're going to hit your leg.
I see.
That's why I'm also wearing a pair of steel-toed boots. For the same reason. So you really do, it's just a safety thing. So anyway, that's some of the wood trimming part of my current life.
It also will double as your gym.
Oh yeah, totally. We had a very funny thing where my wife was not with me when I was doing some initial clearing. there's another amazing tool I have that we'll maybe have to talk about another time, called a puller bear, which is a giant wrench for pulling Scotch broom out of the ground, other kinds of trees. And we were clearing a whole acre of Scotch broom to make a campsite. And I posted some Instagrams of before and after, and all the giant piles of Scotch broom. And my mother-in-law said, "Jen, it looks like you missed going to the gulag this weekend." And so we've been referring to this place as the gulag ever since, because there is the work never stops.
Right.
And it's great. I lost about 10 pounds when we first were. I was first clearing. I was spending 10, 12 hours a day, just in the spring, clearing brush, because the house had been kind of neglected. Anyway, it's fun. It's the kind of daily life that. And it's funny because there's a wonderful story by Chekhov called Gooseberries, which is really a story about the ambiguous nature of happiness. The title comes from this guy who always wanted to retire and grow gooseberries, and his brother, goes, they were sour and thin, but they made him so happy, and I don't quite get it. But there's this, this guy has this big rant about the ambiguous nature of happiness. But there's also, earlier in the story, there's this incredible expression of joy. They go to these two Russian aristocrats. Of course, Chekhov was a Russian aristocrat and quite wealthy, but felt the burden of that, the inequality, just like we have today. And he endowed hospitals. He was really into, what do we do to help the lot of other people? And so the story, in a lot of ways, is about the responsibility of this. But he's out walking in the rain, and they go to visit another aristocrat who's kind of moved in with his serfs and is working in the fields with them. And this guy says, "Oh, I haven't bathed. Let's go have a swim." And they go swimming in the river. And this wonderful expression of joy of swimming. And that's actually, we actually call this cabin that we bought Gooseberries as a result of that story, both as a reminder of the privilege of, that it expresses, but also just that joy, so it's the joy and the work go together, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before I leave this, I show you one more of the Greenworks tools, just right here. I don't know if you can see it right there on the ground. And that's the leaf blower, which uses the same batteries.
Okay.
And there's also a weed whacker and a hedge trimmer and so on. So it's a really great set of cordless tools. I have pretty much all of them.
Well, and they all use that same very large battery.
Yeah.
That's really great.
So anyway, but jumping ahead to swimming, one of the other things that I wanted to show you is my goggles for swimming. I always like to swim with goggles because I maybe it was growing up nearsighted. Mm-hmm. I treasure being able to see. I had LASIK, maybe 15 years ago, and
mm-hmm.
But anyway, I love being able to see underwater, and so I take these goggles with me everywhere. And I'm going to show you two pairs. The goggles that I found that are far and away the best are these. They're called Vista goggles. I'm going to put this on. This is my old pair that are they're starting to look a little. You can see the maybe you can't see, but they're a little scratched and the visibility isn't so good. But I recently got a pair of Vista Pro, which have a slightly different pattern. They actually have, a clearer space. The lens goes all the way across. And these ones are even better. They're super watertight. You can see beautifully. They're not your normal little tiny swimming goggles, but I find that they're the most leak-proof and best visibility of any goggles I've ever tried.
Do they come with a prescription option?
I don't know. I've never gotten a prescription option because I don't need it anymore, but they may. But anyway, I take them with me, and you never know when you're going to want to swim. My wife and I were in Sicily earlier this year, and I just happened to have them in my bag because I keep them in the bag all the time. And turned out the water was much warmer than we expected. And so we went swimming off the rocks every day in Syracuse. And I was so glad I had them because it was just the light in the Mediterranean and the fish. It was fantastic snorkeling. Yeah, by the way, it's just, to me, I don't ever use a snorkel because, you can breathe just as well, come up for air. So a small pair of goggles is so much better than a big mask and snorkel outfit. Anyway.
So those are called Vista. Again, the model was a Vista.
Yeah, and the one I'm liking even better is the new ones I just got, which are Vista Pro.
Vista Pros. Okay, we'll have a link to that. That's a great tip. I like the idea of always carrying it with you. Just put it in your luggage somewhere and always.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like I keep, it's funny. I have since I travel a lot for business, I have most of my suitcases full of sort of the regular things, and I put in a few clothes. I have a small.
What are your regular things? Like you have your swim mask, and
I have a pair of running shorts, and I have a knee brace and an ankle brace in case my knees or ankles get wonky since I'm getting older and running is not always the best. I have something called Gan Mao Ling, which is a Chinese herb, which is great if you ever feel the cold coming on, and black elderberry capsules. I keep those with me all the time. But I also have like a light blanket because you go to most hotels these days and all they have are heavy comforters, So I bring my own blanket. I got tired of asking, at the hotel, can you bring me a light blanket? And then half the time, all they do is bring you another comforter. And because I sleep very hot and I don't want something heavy. And what else do I have in there? Depending on where I'm going, I may bring my pillow. And so there's not much room for clothes by the.
Oh, you probably have like chargers.
Yeah. Of course, that usually lives in my. I have my backpack, which is my laptop bag.
Yeah,
has all that stuff in it.
Okay.
Anyway, it's great. I still only take a carry-on, but you can usually get enough in there.
Yeah, I only kept carry-on as well.
Yeah, and it's just if you're all ready. I also have, I guess, I have clothes for sleeping. I have, a pair of boxers and a t-shirt that are my sleep clothes, and so everything's ready to go. And all I have to do is say, okay, what am I doing on this trip? What clothes do I need? And I add 2 or 3 things, some underwear and socks, and I'm done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have a bag that's always packed too, with duplicates of things if necessary.
Yeah.
I have a hat because I'm bald and stuff like that.
Yeah. Speaking of hats, man, I've for years I've used the Tilly hemp hat.
Yeah.
Lost several of them. One blew off on Lake Powell once and sank. That goes a long way down. But mostly, anyway, the reason I'm so disappointed. I was going to get another one, so I could have one in Oakland and one up here in the Sierras. And then the Tilly hemp hat is no longer, it doesn't have as big a brim. The new one is much smaller brim. That's no good.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah.
I have a Tilly, but I'm not sure it's the hemp. It's, and I have lost it once in the Galapagos off the boat. That seems to be the common occurrence. It just goes into the water and you're sunk. So do you have another tool that you want to share?
Well, there's one that is, I'm not going to show it to you, but I'm going to tell you about it, and that's Starlink. When we first bought this cabin, there's no internet, there's no phone service here. And being able to get Starlink means that we can effectively be here whenever we want. We thought we'd come up occasionally as a way of getting away from everything. But now, I'm able to do an event like this from literally the middle of nowhere.
So you're going through Starlink right now then?
That's right. We're having this conversation because of Starlink.
And tell me some specifics. Like, it's not 100% because there's a little bit, you're chopping occasionally, but what kind of bandwidth do you get, and how?
Bandwidth is fantastic. I mean, the reason we're getting a little choppy is I'm outside on the deck, and it's not great receptivity here. We actually there's a antenna up on the roof, which is beautiful to sight. You kind of look at the star field and you hold your camera up, and it looks at the visibility. It was a big tree. Actually, you can kind of see the stump right over there. Do you see that stump?
Yeah.
Yeah, right next to the house, and it was blocking the view of the sky.
Okay.
And a neighbor who's a logger took that. That one's a little big for me. It was about 100 feet high, and
next to the house
with his big chainsaw and took it down and bucked it up. But I had to get that cleared out to get the clear view of the sky. Anyway, my wife and I have both have done 2 Zooms at the same time with no problem. If I weren't here, it's also fantastic because if you have, I don't know if it works as well with Android, but I mean with Apple, but with Android, we get phone calling, Wi-Fi calling, and Wi-Fi texting with no problem. I'm not sure, it doesn't seem to work with Apple as well.
Okay. And what were the costs involved, and was there a long waiting list, and how did that work out?
There is a long waiting list. And I don't remember. I think the cost of the equipment is about $500, and it's about $100 a month.
Okay. Does it require a power to the antenna?
Yeah. Basically, you plug in the base station. There's a cord that goes. I had drill a hole through the wall and up to the roof. And lay the wire. The power is an interesting thing here because, again, being out remote, the power goes out frequently. In fact, we had a bit of a scare one of the first times we were up here. In the beginning of fire season, there was a pretty big fire. We learned about the fire, and they cut off the power just as we were learning about it. And suddenly we were cut off, and we didn't know anything about what should we do. The nearest cell service is about a 15-minute drive up out of the canyon. There's citizen band radio that they use for the canyon, for people to get alerts and things. But when the Starlink went out, suddenly we were cut off. And so one of the things we immediately did was we went out and bought a big backup battery. We got something from a company called Goal Zero. I take it back, and it comes with can buy some big solar panels for it. So you can charge it from the wall, but you can also charge it from the solar panels. So having a backup battery that's good to keep, it's basically so we can keep the internet up, because if there is a fire, we need to stay informed, and that's probably one of the biggest things that we need to do.
All right. So that's now running off of solar. Solar to the battery.
Well, the backup battery is just sitting there if we need it. Right now, it's plugged into the wall. But if it goes out, we just the backup battery is heavy enough that we're not going to haul it upstairs to where the Starlink is. But I just got a long extension cord so we can run it from the battery upstairs, and then we can just put the solar panels out on the porch to recharge the thing.
Cool. So you recommend the Starlink then?
Oh, incredible. Yeah. I mean, again, would I recommend it if I lived for house in town? Probably not. We have Sonic in Oakland, and we're quite happy with that. But for a place like this, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
I think that, we know some people here, the place that you and I went camping last year, which is how we found this place. The woman who owned that had very, very slow internet from, the previous generation of satellite internet from Usenet. And it's about the same cost and a fraction of the speed. And, you really can't do very much with it without overloading it.
Well, that's really fantastic. So, Tim, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're working on these days, what your current project or passion is that you want to share?
Well, there's a couple of things that I'm working on that are are pretty interesting to me. Well, probably the biggest frame for what I'm spending a lot of my intellectual time on is really understanding algorithmic economics, is how you might describe it. It seems to me that companies like Google and Amazon and Facebook, for that matter, are running what, in popular economics literature they call an invisible hand. We have this notion of the market as being sort of this decentralized thing where all these independent actions add up to these to the wisdom of crowd. Economists have got Nobel Prizes for saying, well, the market takes all available information into account, and it does this in this decentralized way, and that's celebrated. And it's sort of interesting because in traditional economics, this is often framed around, that information is then reflected in prices. But if you think about Google search, there's no price. Everything is free. And so we have different signals than the kinds of things that add up to price. Page rank, anchor text, what words are in the document, even signals like one that I've always loved that Google uses called the long click. If somebody clicks on the first link and goes away, then the first link was presumably what they were looking for. If they do a short click, they click on the first link, they go away, and they come right back and click on the second link, which Google can measure because they're tracking this thing that everybody says, well, surveillance capitalism. And I go, well, we got to figure out some balance there. But man, there's some amazing intelligence that's happening where they're able to say, no, people actually prefer the second link, so let's promote it to the first link. That's a pretty powerful signal for them. But anyway, back to this idea, it seems to me that was this incredible advance, which I originally kind of talked a lot about when I was writing about Web 2.0 in 2005 or so, of these algorithmic collective intelligences. And one of the things that's been concerning me is that if you look at the progress of Google and Amazon over the last 10 years, they've been moving away from that. Amazon used to use all these signals to say, this is the product you really want. But now when you do a search on Amazon, it's all ads. So they've kind of turned away from this great advance in collective intelligence towards back to going, well, we're going to figure out, what people, want to pay us for. And again, I mean, they are mixing in some of the collective intelligence, but both Google and Amazon are moving away from that. And anyway, I'm spending a lot of time. I'm working with Mariana Mazzucato at the Institute for Innovation and Public Purpose at University College London. I'm a visiting professor there, as well as being I'm still the CEO of O'Reilly Media, but I'm acting much more like executive chairman. And so I'm spending a lot of time on this sort of understanding the economics of the platforms, how they're using their algorithms for self-preferencing. I'm writing some papers about what I'm calling algorithmic rents, their ability to attract excess profits. I'm actually writing a paper right now called Rising Tide Rents and Robber Baron Rents, which is about this idea that you originally get excess profits because you're an innovator and you're growing this new market, which is really great for everybody. The market slows down, but the master algorithm of our society, which is, you must keep growing your corporate profits, kicks in and they go, wait, the internet's not growing so fast. We can't get as much profit just by growing normally. Now we have to start turn to extractive profits. And that's what I see for example, in Amazon's advertising business. So I'm spending a bunch of time trying to, do some historical research and tie that up. And it's really not, this might be useful for antitrust people, but mainly I see it as useful for the CEOs of these companies. Because it seems to me that out of this comes a theory of economics, which is very ecological. Because what you see, for example, at Amazon is even if they're solving for we've gotten these products that we're showing through ads are still good products. We made sure that they're highly rated and they're the best price and so on. So it's the combination. the downside is this is a transfer of profits from the people who are selling the products to the gatekeeper. And, maybe that's good, but it's market shaping. It means that, the returns go to scale, for example. Like if supplying products becomes a low margin business, then you got to get your profits by being really big. And so that's why you see these multi-billion-dollar Chinese companies dominating categories that used to have more small merchants in them. And so, this idea of if we want to have a market that's robust for ordinary people, you can't have these algorithms that favor scale. And long term, you have to think about that. And so Google, for example, when they start saying, well, it's better for the user if we just give them the answers, where before maybe you had 5 companies trying to do the best site for song lyrics. Now you have Google anointed one of them and said, we're going to use your lyrics and we'll pay you money for it, and it'll be a 5-year contract. And there's no point in anybody else even bothering. So the market has been, shaped by the choices that they make.
Do you find
raise the awareness of this?
Do you find the same thing happening in China? Because we have a kind of a parallel system that would be a nice comparison to see whether the same thing happening on their platforms.
Yeah. Long term, I would like to go there. It's hard enough to get data on the U.S. platforms, because disclosure is not one of the things that these companies like to do. I mean, a lot of what I've, for example, even to make the case that Amazon is taxing its marketplace at a much higher rate, there's a lot of inference. They don't report, for example, the gross merchandise volume of their marketplace. They just report the fees that they collect, and without knowing the gross merchandise volume, you can't say, well, those fees going up or down. So there's really very poor disclosure. And that's why I've written a couple of papers in the last year or co-authored on, why we need better disclosure from the platforms. In this case, Jeff, in one of his shareholder letters, explained that he was kind of bragging about how the third-party marketplace, how well it was doing. And so he described what percentage of their sales it was relative to the first-party marketplace where they sell products directly. And I went, aha, from that I can calculate gross merchandise volume. And from that I can then say, well, are the fees going up? And sure enough, they used to be 23%. They're now 34% of what merchants can get. So it's really interesting to me because I do think that we, I don't think we really like the market that we have built. We like a lot of things about it. We like, that we have lots of stuff, but is it the right stuff? And particularly as we head into an era of climate change, where we're going to have to actually find new guiding principles for our economy than just, the economy must grow. And if that means just, buying more throwaway stuff at the cheapest price, we're going to need to be better at this. And we have new tools. Anyway, so related to all of this, and I guess I could go on about this, I'm really fascinated by some of the advances in AI. I think large language models, people like to go, just pile on and go, oh, they're not really intelligent. They're, stochastic parrots, just, repeating back what they, ingest. And I go, well, yeah, people are most of the time too, And it's funny because right now I'm on a mailing list that's discussing, the Blaise Aguirre-Iarcas, who runs the AI group for Android research group, is talking about, interactions with the Lambda large language model, which is the one that Blake Lemoine was talking about. And it's quite remarkable. And, he was actually talking about, kind of some work they're doing on how you can actually train these things to have a kind of morality, like basically rather than saying, oh, we've got to keep them from learning anti-Semitic slurs. No, we can teach them that those are anti-Semitic slurs and not to use them. And so it's just really interesting. He wrote this long Medium post about this, and there's this discussion on this mailing list, and it very quickly, went down all the predictable stuff about all these things are just stochastic parrots. And I go, you're not engaging at all with the actual argument here, and you're acting like stochastic parrots. You're all parroting back the arguments about why this stuff isn't intelligent. It's not even relevant to the discussion.
Yeah. Well, I've been looking at the image generators like DALL-E, Midjourney,
Yeah, I know.
Imagen, and one of the critiques of it is, well, they're just ingesting all the existing work of other artists, and some artists might want to be removed from that because they don't want people kind of copying their style. And the response is, well, that's what human student artists do, is they look at thousands and thousands of images, and they are trained on other people's work, just like the AI. So training.
Totally. Yeah, we hold all these AI things to a much higher standard than we hold humans.
Well, yeah,
I saw some of your work that you did with Midjourney, and it's really quite remarkable.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what it means and where it's going to go. And I'm doing an article for Wired, and I've been interviewing all the people who have made these things. And this is a spectacular case where they literally have no idea what their invention is going to be used for, right? I mean, it was sort of like it's made on the way to make a more general AI, and they happened to make this thing, and now it's sort of becoming a tool, but they really don't know what it's going to be used for, and they're as surprised as anybody in the way that people are using it. And by the way, the most common use case I've seen of actually using these images rather than just kind of playing with them, it's exactly what I'm using them for, is for PowerPoint presentations.
Yeah.
When you're looking for an image that you want, you sort of specify it, and you're getting a unique image that has no copyright issues, and it's yours, and it's perfect. And so
that's a great use case. And I have to say, I just find that whole area is so at the cutting edge of the future.
Yeah.
That we got to care about it. It's if you think about other technologies that have been at this inflection point, it just gets weirder and faster from here.
Yeah.
And I also think it's actually destabilizing to the current structure of the industry in ways that I don't think people think about. There's been a lot of talk, for example, about crypto and Web3 of being this is somehow going to be the end of the big data era, and I don't get it. What I think is the end of the big data era is going to be these large language models. We gave them all the data, right? And then now we're calling them, and particularly as we start to get, there's some open source ones, ones that are widely available. They're really expensive to train, but nowhere near as expensive to run as, for example, Google's prior collection. And I thought about this a lot because of something we did at O'Reilly.com. We have this answer search engine, which is actually trained on a much earlier large language model, BERT. It's one of the very first ones. And it was trained on our content. And now we have a better search. For the first time in 20 years, we can search our own content better than Google can.
Mm-hmm.
And we just worked with a small company that basically, built a model of all the O'Reilly content on the platform. And now when, you search for something, you can go right to the page, you can go right to the minute of a video. And,
right.
And it I think it's really liberating, and it's actually going to be, I think if you think about, it's a little bit like, if you think about, well, what's really going to undermine Amazon's dominance? It's going to be Shopify, which is building a bunch of tools. It's going to be things like Miso, which is the tool that we're using. They're doing a lot with e-commerce. It's going to be, things like Stripe. So all of a sudden, people have a lot of the capabilities that Amazon had, but just for rent, quite cheaply. So they don't have to build that anymore in a big centralized way.
So you mentioned something I think is really important, like that you have a language model that can search your O'Reilly content better than Google can, and eventually that becomes more AI-ish. That's the thing I kind of repeat to everybody is that they talk about AI as if it was a singular thing. And we're going to see so many AIs, plural, that there's like, Midjourney is an AI that does these images, and it is been trained specifically to make art-ish things rather than photorealistic. Yeah. And so that will be domain. So it's not like there's one AI that does this. There are going to be many, many varieties. And I think we're heading into the territory where there is going to be multiple AIs and competitive advantage to having a different AI than they have. And
I think that's totally right.
This idea that there's the AI, the singular AI that does everything, and it's this massive singularity is just unfeasible and unlikely and wrong.
Oh, yeah, totally. Well, it's also a lot like humans. I mean,
yeah,
both of us got some basic training. We both learned the English language, right, for example. But then you've been training your model on, right, probably thousands of different books than I've trained my model on.
Exactly.
And like an experienced plumber or carpenter or auto mechanic has all this training that a brilliant nuclear physicist may not have. Right.
So the argument that they would make, the others would make, well, you have the super AI that will train on everything. Well, that's just not engineeringly possible. You can't do everything. And there's also disadvantages to trying to do everything. And it's like it's like the Swiss Army knife. Like you can't do everything equally well. You can't train on everything equally well. And so there's always trade-offs. And so the idea of having specialized things, like just for your content or a competitive advantage of doing things a little differently, will always remain. And so I think we're going to move towards this specialization of AI rather than this idea of the universal AI.
Right. And we're going to be working with AI as a companion. I mean, you're using Midjourney to,
100%.
It's a tool.
It is.
It's an amazing tool.
It is. And co-creation all the way.
Yeah. The CEO of GitHub told me, I don't remember what the number was. It was something like 30% of all code that's going into GitHub now is
Copilot.
Is Copilot.
Yeah,
has some Copilot contributions.
Right. For the listeners, Copilot is kind of a assisted AI that auto-completes code. So
and Copilot this is also just kind of a really important thing to understand. GitHub Copilot is an integration via API of the OpenAI's Codex model, right? So GitHub themselves didn't build this thing, even though they're part of Microsoft. They're calling OpenAI's model, and they've just done the integration of that into like a developer tool, right? So that you can actually say, "Give me some code to do this thing,"
right?
And so there's going to be a whole lot of front ends to these models,
right?
Will go in different directions,
right? Well, we could talk about this for a long time, and we should, but I just wanted to kind of conclude our cool tools part. I'm really glad that you're on the case there, Tim. As we can tell, there's a lot to be done, and we're just at the very beginning of even understanding what it is that we're up to. So I'm so glad you're paying attention. I hope you continue that. Thank you for sharing your cool tools, and especially the electric chainsaw, which I have to agree is really the way to go these days. And all your other tools, much appreciated. So thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for doing this, Kevin. It's always fun.
We're glad that you enjoyed this issue of the Cool Tools Show and Tell. Just want to remind you that we have some other coolish material on our YouTube channel here. Please subscribe, comment, like. In addition, this Cool Tools Show and Tell is also available in an Audible podcast form. You can subscribe to it wherever you subscribe to other podcasts if you just wanted to listen. And if you're listening, know that there is a visual version of this on our YouTube channel where we're actually showing the tools, and there's a little bit more of a visual component there. In addition, the same folks that put us, the Cool Tools website out, we also put out a free newsletter every week. It's very, very short. It's one page or less. We recommend 6 very brief items that are very succinct, easy to read. You can deal with it in a couple minutes. And every week we bring to you the 6 cool things that we have uncovered and want to share. And it's called Recommendo with 1M, recommendo.com. You'll be able to find it there. It's free. Join 50,000 plus other subscribers every Sunday morning. You'll get it in your email box. And it's actually one of the most popular things that we produce. But we do produce other newsletters as well. One of them is called What's in Your Bag. We have one that goes out to tools and tips for your workshop. So you can get those at our website, and they are also free. And finally, I want to mention the fact that we do have a Patreon, and this podcast and this vidcast are supported by Patreon supporters. The minimum is $1 a month. And for that, you get an email to ask us anything. We'll respond and answer your question if we're able to. There are other higher levels. You can all see those at our Patreon page. And all those links are below right here. So thank you again for being a fan. And we'll keep producing stuff if you enjoy it. Thanks. We give thanks to this week's patrons, who include Dan Dow, Bruce Bear, Shiraz Sherwani, Ed O'Brien, Mary Estabrooks, Dan Spakowitz, Maureen Grolnick, Pillabine, Santiago Uribe, and Kevin Sill. Thank you all for your support.